So now I'm just going to introduce you to our presenter today. So, Kevin Kiley, for more than 10 years, he has successfully coached early and mid career professionals, career switchers, high potential leaders, medical doctors, and graduate and undergraduate students. He's a professional certified coach through the International Coach Federation, and he's a certified career coach, and he's also an admissions consultant for graduate school applicants. So, now I'm going to hand it over to you, Kevin.
Awesome. Helen, thank you so much for that warm introduction. And thank you all very much for being here. It's a thrill to be part of the Northwestern Alumni Association webinar series. This is my third or fourth presentation that I've been involved with, and it's always a pleasure to be with you all. And thank you for joining me on this Thursday morning. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off, but then I'll come back for the Q&A. And as Helen said, we are going to reserve some time at the end of the presentation today for Q&A. So I hope you use that tab here in a big marker to make sure that your questions are heard. We'll do our best to get to as many of those as we possibly can. Okay, let's get started. You know, as I was putting together this presentation, I was kind of thinking about the current relationship between employers and employees. And when I did that, I thought of this meme that you may have seen in the past. And it just kind of came to mind as I was thinking about that relationship. And I thought, you know, maybe that would be a good thing to lead off my presentation with and kind of talk about, you know, the relationship again between employers and employees. And I thought, you know, if I'm going to use this meme, you know, that I've saw, you know, gosh, a year or two ago or whatever it was, I should probably do some research and figure out, you know, who I should attribute it to or where it came from, or, you know, who said it. So I did a little research and looked around the internet, which is always an interesting endeavor. And first I found that apparently, I guess Martin Luther King said it, but then, you know, I started thinking a little bit more and I realized that Martin Luther King Jr., wonderful as he was, probably did not have much to say about online job postings. And so I thought, okay, probably not MLK. So I kept digging, and then I thought, oh, Morgan Freeman. You know, Morgan Freeman. You know, he's a kind of a wise old guy. You know, kind of he's got a lot of important things to say and everything. I mean, he's played, you know, God and Bruce Almighty. I mean, he probably has some important things to say. I mean, you know, maybe he said it, but I kept looking, and it's like, well, maybe this guy said it, or maybe this guy said it, or maybe The Rock said it. I don't know who said it. So the bottom line is I kept looking around, and the bottom line is inconclusive. I have no idea who said this, or who said it first, I should say. But nevertheless, I thought it makes an interesting point about employers and employees. And I wanted to get your opinion on this. So Helen's going to launch a poll here. The question I want to ask you to start off our webinar today is, you know, do you agree with this? Is that, you know, 100% right? Or probably true in most cases? Guess it could be true every once in a while, or, you know, whatever. Kevin, my employer would never do anything bad to me. There's no way at all. So we have the poll coming up here. Thank you, Helen. And if you just take a moment and tell us your thoughts, tell me what you think.
All right, everyone, the poll question is up. Feel free to cast in your votes. And if you click on polls and then open, you can see the results coming in.
Okay.
So it kind of looks like choice B, overall, it's probably true in most cases, has gotten the highest votes so far.
All right. Yeah, with 100% right being a close second and almost neck and neck, almost true every once in a while. And I'm not surprised to see that apparently no one voted for choice D. So, which is, you know, in today's environment, that's it's not surprising at all. Especially, I mean, we wake up this morning to the new news of the new jobless claims last week were 2.4 million new jobless claims just last week. It brings it to over 38 million in the last 9 weeks. And so I think that there's a sense, especially now these days, that you know, that things can happen even in the best of circumstances, even in the worst of circumstances, even with the best of employers. And so that relationship between employer and employee can be strong, but there can often be forces that are at play that can interfere with that. You know, we see more and more of this. You know, as the jobless claims reports indicate this morning, you know, unfortunately, we have been forced to make hard decisions. This is often sort of corporate speak for, we're doing layoffs or we're doing furloughs or something along those lines. And there's a lot of uncertainty out there too. Even as early as late March, we saw, even Forbes was saying that there may be consequences that are going to last a long, long time. And I think with where we are now, coming up on about 2 months later, we could agree with the sentiment that this, whatever we're dealing with right now, although the full scope of it may still not even be known, we don't know how this is going to go and what the overall trends are going to be. The New York Times positioned in early April that most of the forecasts about when things are going to truly sort of the restrictions on movement and commerce will be lifted, gussied up guesses. And obviously we are now seeing some of those restrictions being lifted. But I think most people who are paying attention know that it's a tentative thing, and that there's a lot of concern about kind of how it's going to go, even from the most optimistic of individuals. Myself, I'm a career coach, as Helen mentioned, and I'm getting a lot of requests like this from prospective clients. They find me online or something, and my firm is struggling, and I'm preparing for a possible layoff. Looking for some job search or career assistance there. Kevin, I got furloughed on Friday. I don't think it's going to stop there. My company is at a standstill. Can you help me? I'm seeing a lot of that these days, and so there's a lot of negativity out there. And so, getting back to the results of the poll, even the best employers encounter things that are outside of their control, and those are things that can impact our future at that organization, even if they are the greatest employer ever. That is one of 4 career truths I would want you to keep in mind. And one of my favorite axioms when it comes to career management: either you manage your career or your career will be managed for you. There are definitely aspects of our career that if we don't pay careful attention to them, someone else will manage it for us. There cannot be any guarantees with our career, but there are always things we can do to maximize our chances for career success and for our employability. Even in a down economy, even in a time of a pandemic, even in the worst circumstances, there are always things that we can be doing to maximize our chances. And that's the focus of this webinar today. There aren't necessarily guarantees. There are things that are definitely outside of our control, but there are definitely things we can always be doing to maximize our chances. So today's premise is where you're either currently employed, but you're thinking that could change because you're either ready for a job change, or because you're anticipating layoffs or furloughs, or you are currently not employed. So the question is what are those things? What are some of those things that you can be doing to maximize your chances for career success and employability? Because as I mentioned, there are always things you can be doing. So that's what we're going to go through. So the agenda is 9 steps within your current job, and then we're going to talk about LinkedIn, 3 steps toward getting your LinkedIn profile and optimizing things there. Then 9 other proven tactics, kind of a mishmash of various different things and tactics you can be doing. And then, as we mentioned earlier, the Q&A. Again, please get those questions going in the Q&A. That is my favorite part of every one of my webinars that I do, because I can present a bunch of information to the audience and to our wonderful participants that I think are important, but I'm very curious to know where your minds are and what you're thinking about and what questions I can specifically address for you. So we'll look forward to that part near the tail end of our webinar here today. A little bit about me. Helen was gracious in presenting some of my bio, which I greatly appreciate. I've been a career coach. I've been doing career coaching for more than 10 years. I've worked in corporate talent development. I've been in 20 plus years of professional roles, mostly in leadership experience. I've hired a lot of people, and in the course of my professional career, I've reviewed a lot of applications. My company is Career Roadmap. If you're welcome to check me out there at careerroadmap.com. As Helen mentioned, I am also a grad school admissions coach. I do that with Grad School Roadmap. The founder of Grad School Roadmap is Dr. Don Martin, who is a Northwestern PhD alum. And he is a wonderful gentleman and has literally written the book on grad school admissions. And so my work with Dr. Don Martin is through Grad School Roadmap. You can check us out there. And I would be remiss if I didn't quickly mention that right now, given where we are in big picture with respect to grad school and kind of where we are admissions wise, right now, in a very strange way, in mid or late May, the admissions door for grad schools in many cases is still open, whereas usually right now it would be all but closed. There's a lot of things that are driving that, and there are a lot of forces at play. But if by chance you are thinking about grad school, now might not be a bad time to be thinking about that. And if you're interested in that conversation, I would invite you to get in touch with me later. My contact information will be at the end of the presentation, or you can look us up on gradschoolroadmap.com. www.actionable.com. So that's a little bit about me. So let's get into our presentation and the real meat of it here. So let's first do a reality check here. So people I've coached all within the past several weeks, there's been a lot of negativity out there, this conversation that the world is closed, and people are having interviews and think that they're getting far along, but all of a sudden they get a call back and they say they're doing a hiring freeze and it's on hold indefinitely, the biggest curveball in the history of the world. And people who are currently employed, I have no idea what my company is doing these days. So there's a lot of negativity and a lot of just people being unsure of what's going on. So I, as much as I'm optimistic and I know that there are things you can be doing to benefit your career right now, I want to make sure that we acknowledge the obvious. It's tough out there, and no one's saying that it's not tough out there. But just remember that although there are things outside of our control, there are things within our control. And that's what the focus of our webinar here is today. There are always things that we can be doing now to give ourselves the best possible chances. So let's go ahead and jump into some of this stuff. So 9 tactics within your current job. Again, we're talking about employability, and we're talking about kind of developing your career. Here's our second poll. So unfortunately, this is a scenario. You get laid off today. IT access is cut off immediately, which is usually how it works. And you're given a day and time. Since we're all working remotely these days, you're given a day and time. You have to come into the office, turn in your ID badge and your computer, and then you have basically 10 minutes to pack up your belongings and leave. Of course, this is all done while escorted by security. If you've never been laid off, first of all, congratulations, that's good. Second of all, just so you know, this is pretty much how it happens most of the time. Again, there's no universal here, but that's kind of how it works. So second poll, the question is, you have basically 10 minutes to pack up your belongings and get out of there. Could you do it? No problem. I'd grab that framed picture of my family off my desk and I'm gone. Number 2 is there's no way. 3, I'd have to scramble, but I could do it. And number 4, I hope someone would clear my computer search history. I hope that someone has a good sense of humor and picks number 4 in this whole thing. But if not, thank you, Helen, for launching that poll. We'll take a minute here and see what our audience thinks. And they're ticking in slowly but surely. It looks like the majority of people are saying I'd have to scramble, but I could do it. And with a close second, somewhat close second anyway, that you'd be out the door in 90 seconds. It's good to see. And thank you for those of you who had the sense of humor to answer the final option, that you would have someone clear your computer search. That's good. Okay, so it's coming up on scramble, but I could do it. I don't like to be overly pessimistic about this sort of thing, but even for people who are kind of anticipating that something like this could happen, when I talk to them after the fact, they talk about just the fact. I mean, there's a lot of emotions and a lot of things that are at play there, but they often talk about how surprised they are and how they really didn't have a chance to really close things out within their office, their workspace, their cube, or whatever it might be. And so this is something to kind of keep in mind as you're kind of going through this experience. And if you are concerned about that, what I'm going to do now is kind of go through 9 tactics, and they're broken down into defensive tactics and offensive tactics. If you'll forgive the sports term there, defensive tactics, preparing for the what if, just in case it would happen. And for offensive tactics, you can prevent the what if by sort of going on the offensive or going on the attack, so to speak. So tactics within your current job, playing defense. I group these 2 together: copies of your past evaluations and save a copy of your calendar. Why are these important? Well, if you're going to be looking for work, one of the things that you're almost certainly going to be doing is updating your resume and probably updating your LinkedIn profile as well. And one of the things that are really important to emphasize when it comes to the work experience on a resume and in the LinkedIn profile is that the bullets under those, under each job, under work experience, we don't want to convey just responsibilities there. We want to convey accomplishments. And I do a whole separate webinar just on resumes, so I don't want to get too far into this. But the point is that for a number of reasons, you want to have your evaluations is a great source of information and reminders, especially if you've been at a place for a long time, of what your accomplishments have been there. Same with the saving a copy of your calendar. I tell people to go back through their past calendars, and when you see those meetings, or you see those committees you sat on, or you see those project reminders or whatever, you'll get reminded of those things that you were involved in, and that can be a valuable thing. Both of these things also, especially the past evaluations, are a really good thing from a CYA perspective, you never know when things could come back. If you have glowing evaluations for the past 5 years, and then an organization tries to remove you for cause, you'll want to have copies of those evaluations. You should be doing that quite candidly, no matter what. Anyway, you have a personal copy of that. And by the way, I would never suggest you do something that's outside of policy within your company or outside of regulation or whatever. So there may be companies that have policies against this or whatever, but I would definitely encourage you to be thinking about these things, because they could be valuable to have for a variety of different reasons. Your contacts, whether you use Outlook or Lotus Notes or something else, or whatever you use where you have your contacts, make sure that you have access to those, because for most individuals, there are people who are in their professional sphere who they access more with their work accounts. And if you are even furloughed, you probably won't have access to your IT, and all of a sudden you don't have contact information. So do you need anyone, whose would you need? Are you, and by the way, hint, hint, you should be linking in with these people as well, connecting with them on LinkedIn. But be thinking of, are there any contacts if, you all of a sudden you didn't have access to your IT, would you be, sort of really missing, or would you be scrambling to get their contact information? Clean up your files, online and hard copy. Okay. Is there anything in your files that either you want to probably need to get rid of, need to shred, need to have your own copy of? These are things that are really important. I can tell you that myself, I once followed an individual. I was promoted in a job, and I followed an individual who was let go for cause. And that individual was not able to get back into his office after HR basically walked him out with security. And I have no idea about some of the specific circumstances, but I can definitely tell you that as the person, i.e. myself, who got to clean out his office after he left, I can promise you there were things that he really wished that he would have been able to take out of that office. And I'll just leave it at that. And it may not be anything that's necessarily, private or embarrassing per se, but, it could be things such as, like medications might be a good example. If you've got, some things that you take or whatever, and you've got a stash of that in your dress. There's a number of different examples of that, but is there anything else that, if the circumstances were such that you need to get out of your office, just something to think about. Is there anything there? Maybe there's nothing, maybe there is something. Okay, so moving to the offense now, cultivating interpersonal relationships. Just take time to check in on people, okay? It kind of goes hand in hand with this next one of talking about being a pillar of professionalism. I would say number 6, the summary of number 6 is be a human being, and number 7 is be a professional. When you the emphasis on being a human being, people, it's tough for a lot of people right now, and they may not always be showing the signs of stress. They may be everything might seem to be just fine. But take the time to check in on people, and because I think especially in certain office cultures where we're all working from home right now, I think you can stand out by just taking time to check in with people and making sure that they're okay. Correspondingly, your professionalism cannot falter at this time. This is not the time to be cutting corners. If there's ever a time to be going the extra mile, beating deadlines, being on budget, being on time, excelling in your role, this is it. Because if it comes to a point where, again, the worst case scenario, they decide they need to let some people go, or even furloughs, this is not the time when, people have a short memory sometimes. And you might have been in an organization for 10 years, and your first 8 years, you were just, the shooting star. And then the last 2 years, it hasn't been, it's been okay, but it just hasn't been the same. And all of a sudden, people get this idea in their minds that you're expendable. And that's just not what you want. Correspondingly, thinking about your resume, talk about being professional and kind of keeping your head up. What bullet points would you like to have on your resume, but you currently can't? And think about where your ideal next job might be, or where you might want to be next. The question is there anything that you can be doing right now within the scope of your current job that you could actually do, propose, raise your hand to volunteer for, or just get involved in that would give you the ability to honestly, fairly, ethically include something on your resume or in your LinkedIn profile that you cannot now? Because if you just think about your future ideal next job, where, what are the qualifications that, or the skills or the experiences that might be called for there? If you don't have them, is there a way that you could reasonably get that experience now so that you are a stronger candidate for that next thing? And by the way, as I've mentioned here, if you're not sure what some of those things might be, do some searching online for look at some of those jobs that you might aspire to have next, and look at the qualifications, look at the requirements, and look at the preferred requirements, and make an honest assessment. Do I have all these things? Is there anything I can do about it now? Related to that, the ninth tactic within your current job, volunteer to expand your role. Just like this is the time to be the pillar of professionalism, this is not the time to have your head down and just hope that nobody notices you. This is, think about your big picture business. Where is business like to go up? Where is it likely to go down? And how can you align with where it's going to go, where it's going to rise, where the most opportunity is, and make sure you communicate this to the people who make decisions within your organization. Where can you pitch in to create more value? Where can you lead? Because again, if tough decisions have to be made, one of the things that they might be looking for is who can help us sort of cover our bases, who can help us, if you will, keep the lights on at the organization while we go through this tough time. And if you have broader experience than what you're doing right now, you might all of a sudden have extra value to your organization if you make very clear, that you have experience or a background in a certain area. Do not count on the decision makers at your organization to be going in and checking your LinkedIn profile or to go back to your resume from 5 years ago and say, oh, yes, she has experience in this, so we should keep her around. So do not let them say, if we had only known, if we'd only known that you had a background in that, we could have kept you around and you could have, been the acting director of whatever for the next 3 months while we ride this out. Do not let them do that. Keep your head up, volunteer to expand your role, and be proactive about proving your value within the organization. So 9 tactics within your current job, there they are. And by the way, I am going to make a copy of this PowerPoint available for the people who are attending today. And I'll be sure to get that to Helen for distribution. And so if I encourage you to obviously take notes, but just so you know, I'm going to make this available afterward. So let's move on. Poll number 3. We're going to transition now to LinkedIn. And poll number 3 is, what do you think about it? And 5 different options here. Everything from I'm not on it to I love it to what's LinkedIn. So let's go ahead and launch that poll, please, Helen. Thank you very much. And we'll see kind of where people are here on the overall thing. Ooh. Pretty strong split for I like it. I'm on there maybe once a week and I'm all over it as in a daily thing. And we have some people who are kind of lukewarm about it. 13% are saying, man, but I prefer to be on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, something like that. Pretty close balance there between I like it and maybe on there once a week and I'm all over it, part of my daily routine. Good. I'm glad to know that. And I'm glad that there's only one person who said, what's LinkedIn? And there's a few that are not on LinkedIn. I will consider my presentation a success if I can get that 4% who say, what's LinkedIn and I'm not on it, to at least jump on there and start that process. Thank you, Helen. That is good to know about kind of where the audience is relative to LinkedIn. So why is it important? It sounds like this group already has a pretty strong awareness of it, so I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but it is an absolutely invaluable resource for managing your career and managing your network and managing your personal brand and a number of different things. And for those of you who might be thinking about different jobs, it also has one of the top job boards out there right now. In that, one of the wonderful things about LinkedIn and its job board is that when you go and search for jobs there, when you pull up certain jobs, when you search for them, it actually shows you organization to organization kind of who you're connected to at the organization. And having someone within the organization helping you raise your visibility as a candidate within the organization is just absolutely critical. In fact, it's become a best practice to include a URL for LinkedIn at the top of the resume. Hiring managers and recruiters these days are going out there and proactively checking on that sort of thing. So the school of thought is the best practices is just give them that URL at the top of the resume and kind of make it easy for them. And by the way, it's almost viewed now with suspicion among hiring managers, recruiters, if they can't find you online. Just count on them seeking that out. And so it's really important to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is optimized, because it actually, I know stories where it actually has torpedoed people's chances just because it's been sloppy or unprofessional. Or the other big thing is that there's conflicting information between what's on their resume and what's on their LinkedIn profile. So before you do anything on LinkedIn, a caveat on this, okay, LinkedIn's default settings, when you make an update to your profile, your connections are alerted. And when you look at someone else's profile, they can see that you did. So if for anyone, that's a little bit of a thing for people who lurk on social media. So just be careful with that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong. There are pros and cons to having someone see that you looked at their profile. And also the same thing. There's pros and cons to having your connections be alerted when you make updates. But you just need to know that these will happen, and the default is that they will see these things. And if you want to change it, it's a setting. You need to go into your settings and change these things. So just something to think through. So step one toward having an optimal LinkedIn profile: professional photo that is publicly viewable. So what is this weird gray dot here? That is what people see if you do not have a profile photo posted there, or if you haven't made it publicly available. You don't want that. The research shows that just having a photo there that results in up to 21 more times more profile views and 9 times more connection requests. That is important because that is what LinkedIn is all about. So you want to have a profile there, just a headshot there, and you want to make it publicly available. So what is a good LinkedIn photo? It's a professional looking headshot. It's just you. It's not, a photo from last weekend's wedding that you've cropped out family members from, and it just zooms in on you. And we love your family, but this isn't the place for family photos. It needs to be a professional looking industry specific headshot, non-distracting attire, and it needs to be recent and recognizable as you. And what I say when I talk about that, what I mean is pretend that you're going into a company, you're going into an organization, the pandemic is lifted and you're actually going in, or you're meeting someone for a networking meeting at the local coffee shop or something like that. If the hiring manager or the person you're meeting with has actually gone to LinkedIn and, checked you out there, which you can bet that they have, just as you probably have for them, with that headshot, you needs to be immediately recognizable as you. So when they walk out into their lobby to bring you back for your job interview, and there's 10 other people in the lobby, they can quickly scan the lobby, and see that they know immediately that it's you. So recent and recognizable as you. Usually single color, non-distracting backgrounds work best. Here are some examples of good LinkedIn photos. These 4 individuals get an A for the day. They did a really good job on this. One of the things that I want to point out is this bullet point here where I talk about, look the part of your target industry or functional role. This woman who is second from the right here, it looks to me as though she is in some sort of research or laboratory setting. Looks like she probably has a white lab coat on. Assuming that she is targeting a job in the research industry, in, I guess, the science industry, the medical field, something like that, this is a perfectly appropriate photo. If she were targeting something that was in, corporate finance or something along those lines, I would say no. You need to it needs to look more like the woman who is second from the left here, and that because again it's specific to the industry. One of the things that people are going to look at when they look at your LinkedIn, one of the evaluations that they're going to make on your LinkedIn profile is, does this person look the part of the job? Does this person look like, is he or she, do they look like one of us? And your attire and the setting for your LinkedIn photo, for better or for worse, says something about those things. So you want to make sure that whatever you have there is specific and looks the part for whatever you are targeting, not necessarily for where you are right now. So these are good LinkedIn photos. These are not so good LinkedIn photos. Don't be one of these people. I love my dog. Dogs are awesome, but this is not the place for a photo of you and your dog. It's not the place. Again, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of personality coming through, but sometimes just the thing is too much personality. And again, on the far right here, this is not the place where you want to have, it's a shot of you and someone else, and you crop that someone else or other people out of the photo. So yes, no, yes, no. Okay. Now, moving on to step 2 for an optimized LinkedIn profile: a strong headline and about section. Well, Kevin, what are those? So here we go. This is a headline. This is the area that is just below your name on your profile. The about section is the sort of the first major section that comes up underneath that sort of header that you have there. The headline, a couple quick words about that. There is a popular myth with LinkedIn that your headline is supposed to be is your current job title. And that is complete and utter nonsense. That is a myth, as I said. Your current job title goes beneath these 2 sections. It goes in the experience section. That's where your title goes. If you want to have your title within your headline, there's nothing wrong with that. But I would encourage you to use your headline to communicate something more, to go further than just whatever your current job title is, and talk about your areas of expertise, your background, what your passions are. Just know that when someone searches for you within LinkedIn, the thing that will come up on the search results page it'll be once again your headshot, your name, of course, a couple other little details, but the other major thing that's there is going to be your headline. And so if you're looking to expand your network, if you're looking to raise your visibility on LinkedIn, having a strong headline is going to help you when people find you in search results, click through to you and potentially expand your network that way. Headline's really important. The about section, same kind of thing. This takes everything even further. And this is analogous if you have a resume with a sort of a professional summary or a professional profile, something like that, at the top of your resume. This is analogous to that. The big difference with this between the resume and the LinkedIn profile is that the about section here is usually the best practice, I should say, is that it's written in the first person, whereas in your resume it's a little more telegraph style. And so this is the opportunity to go a little bit further and tell them about you as a person, and go a little further and just tell them what makes you tick, what you're passionate about. These two things together they need to tell the reader what you're all about as a professional. If a reader views these and comes away and they have no idea what you're all about as a professional, or even if you don't have something in your about section, you're doing yourself a disservice. And I would encourage you to loop back through and rethink that. Finally, on LinkedIn optimization, have a complete profile there. It always blows my mind when people have they they start a LinkedIn profile and maybe they updated it about 2 or 3 jobs back, and so 2 or 3 jobs back they've got tons of bullet points, and they have recommendations in there and all kinds of different kinds of things. But then for the 2 most recent jobs, it's just all they did was basically plug in their job, or they have the same. It's pretty obvious they have the same job listed twice, or it's a good effort. It's better than not being on there, but it's just incomplete. Take the time to make sure this is a reflection of you as a professional. Make sure that it reflects accurately and in a way that you want it to, and make sure it's consistent with your resume. Again, one of the big red flags that any hiring manager or recruiting will identify is if there's different information between the two. Conflicting information between the two. It's okay if different information is there. What you cannot have is conflicting information. That's the problem. And so it's really important to make sure that LinkedIn profile is complete and is an accurate reflection of you as a professional and looks professional. So 3 steps toward LinkedIn optimization. Okay, moving right along here. Oh, and by the way, we barely scratched the surface with LinkedIn. There are so many other things that you can use LinkedIn for, relative to your networking, relative to building your brand, relative to finding a job. We've barely scratched the surface here. But what I can tell you is that before you start widely using LinkedIn for all these other wonderful things, I would strongly suggest that you have your profile game ready, up to date, accurate, a strong professional photo, all the things that go into this, so that when you really start more proactively putting yourself out there on LinkedIn, that you have a profile that you're happy with and that you're proud of and will reflect well as you as a professional. So there's so many other things about LinkedIn, but today we're not going to go into any further details. Okay, let's talk about the little things or the big thing. This is the last thing before we get into the Q&A. I hope you're using the Q&A tab quite a bit to submit those questions. Helen's going to lead us through the Q&A in just a few minutes here. I want to quickly go through these things, the little things or the big things, and 9 tactics around that. I say the little things are the big things, and this is an important point to make, because you might see some of these things and think, gee, Kevin, that's not that big a deal. I don't know why you're even making that point or whatever. And, hey, you can decide for yourself. You can determine for yourself if you think these are, big things or little things. And in some cases they are, relatively speaking, little things. I can tell you, though, I have personally seen each of these things not done well, just absolutely tank a job seeker's product, and in some case cost them an offer. Okay, so the little things are the big things. And remember, what we're trying to do here is maximize your chances for success. And especially now, when we get into a job environment or in an economic environment where jobs become harder to get, companies aren't hiring as much, every hire that they do make has to go through, senior vice president approval, all these different things. You are in a competitive process when you are seeking a job, whether we know it or not. 99.9% of the time, you're competing against other people. And what if you think these things aren't big? They're not a big deal. Okay, hey, that's cool. That's fine. you don't do it, you don't follow this. Okay, fine. But what if your competition does? Little things are the big things. And these are not hard to do, but they're important things. Okay, so first thing, and you'll get a sense of where we're going with this. What's your cell phone's voicemail announcement say right now? I have no idea. It's my kids singing. There's no announcement. It's just one of those things that reads off the number and all of a sudden it beeps and the person just so has to talk. It's fairly casual or it's fairly professional. Helen, if you would please launch that. Thank you so very much. Tell me what's going on with your voicemail announcement. This is our final poll for today. And the results are coming in. Yes, sweet. I'd like to shake the hand of the person who acknowledged the first option. So, I have no idea. Hey, if you don't know, you don't know. All right, we'll give it another moment here. Okay, so a little over half have said that it's me and it's fairly professional. And then about a quarter have said that it's a robotic voice. And 7 brave people have said they have no idea. And there's about 17% that have said it's me and it's fairly casual. Thank you for your candor on that. That is good to know. This is definitely something to be thinking about. And it's, again, little things are the big things, right? Best practice, record a professional voicemail announcement, especially if you're in the job search mode. This literally could be the first time that your future boss could be contacting you to set up an interview, to check something out about your background, whatever it might be. And a professional announcement, strongly recommended. It actually record an announcement so the person knows they've reached the correct person. Because sometimes they may have key information to impart to you, and sometimes it could be sensitive or personal information. And if they don't know that they've definitely reached your voicemail, they may not be willing to leave it there. It's okay to let your personality come through, but keep it professional. And my goodness, make sure you clear enough room on your voicemail so that the person calling doesn't get this mailbox is full, and all of a sudden now you're that candidate who's hard to contact. Don't be that person. Make sure that you have room in your voicemail for that kind of thing. And make sure your email is set up professionally too. Correspondingly, it surprises me to this day how many people their company email is what they use. That's the only email that they have. Do not use your company's email for your search. I think most people know that, but it's worth saying out loud. You have an address on a modern platform with a professional username. If you're on AOL, if you're on Juno, it's time for a new one. It's time for an update. And make sure that your avatar, if you have one with your email, i.e. the photo that kind of comes up there for those of you who are new to this, make sure that it is reflective of your professional brand. The easy way to do that, just use the same one that you use for your LinkedIn photo. And another sort of thing that I strongly recommend is use an email signature that has your phone number, email address, yes, the full address, and a link to your LinkedIn profile. And again, you probably want to do that after you have your LinkedIn profile kind of up to date and all ready to go. That's just kind of helps complete a professional thing. Excuse me. Number 3, make it a priority and make sure that you have dedicated time. If this is something that is just kind of a thing that you sort of get to when I have time, my experience in over 10 years of coaching is that it simply isn't a priority, and you won't make the progress that you see someone who makes regular dedicated time on their schedule. However you do that, whether it's your first hour in the morning or for 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon or whatever it is, make sure you develop a process for when you go about doing these things and stick to it. This is what I've seen be the most successful for people who are going through these things. So, and related to that, stay organized. Something to think about too. However you do things, make sure that you have a system for keeping everything straight. When you contact with people using email folders or hard copy things or a big Excel spreadsheet or whatever it might be. Make sure that you have a system for keeping everything straight, because that's going to be really, really important, especially as you go further and further along in the process. All of a sudden you're networking with a lot of people. Maybe you're submitting a lot of applications. Make sure that you have a system for doing that. And by the way, something that I was just coaching someone around just yesterday morning is that when you see a job posting and you apply to something, or you see one that's interesting, make sure that you somehow save a copy of that job posting, whether you copy and paste it into a Word document or you print it out or you somehow save a copy of it, because It could be the case that, okay, you apply to a job, it's posted there, and then they take that posting down, and a week or two later, you get an email asking you to do a phone screen, and you barely even know what the job is, or you don't remember what the specifics of. In other words, do not count on that job posting always being there. Make sure that you keep your own copy of it, because that's going to be your cheat sheet. That's going to be your playbook for when you actually have that interview. So make sure you're keeping a copy of that. Related to the whole stuff about LinkedIn, ladies and gentlemen, please clean up all your social media. I'm sure there are well-documented stories about people getting into trouble based on what they had on social media. We talked earlier about LinkedIn, but guess what? Recruiters and hiring managers will seek you out on all social media. Expect them to Google you and just to see what's out there. If there's something out there that could be seen as a liability, something that we all have things perhaps in our past that we're not so proud of, or things that, you wish you hadn't had out there, clean it up, do what you have to do to get it out there. Because again, in a highly competitive process, this can be a difference maker. Being flexible, having not just a plan A, but plan B, C, D. There are fewer jobs available out there right now, and understand that whatever you might end up doing next, or where things go with your career right now in the short term, it may not be your ideal next step, but having some flexibility and understanding that your career is a series of steps can be really, really important. I mentioned the MBA class of 2010. They started that group, a 2-year traditional full-time MBA program, where I used to be an admissions director at WashU in St. Louis. That group started in fall 2008. When they started, the economy, at least on the surface, was looking all right. Things were good. They had left their full-time jobs to go do an MBA. And I think we all know what happened later in fall 2008 with what some people now call the Great Recession. And this group went into a job market that was just not good. And flexibility won the day. They recognized that, okay, my ideal plan may not be possible now, so I'm going to have to transition. We're in that same circumstance right now, ladies and gentlemen. Having flexibility and understanding that it may be a series of steps is a really important thing. Consider upskilling. As you look out with your peers, if you look out at other people who are in similar circumstances with where you are in your career and that kind of thing, what kind of skills do they have? What kind of certifications or even degrees what do they have that sort of helps keep them competitive in the job market? An example of this is I've worked with an individual who is an accountant by trade and is a very accomplished accountant. But I've sort of been alongside him as a coach a couple times now through a couple different job searches. For whatever reason, this gentleman, who's a great professional, very accomplished, and he has all the acumen you could ever want, but he never got a CPA. And because of that, every time he goes through a job search, he goes through a lot of trepidation, because he's very concerned about whether or not hiring companies are going to disqualify him because he doesn't have that key credential. So the takeaway here is to think about, what sorts of things do you see your peer group having? What sorts of upskilling are they doing? What kinds of skills and acumen are they picking up on that you might consider now? Because again, this is a competitive process, and you don't want to be left out in the cold because you haven't stayed current on certifications, on various skills, and that sort of thing. And so something to think about too. Our last 2 things, 9 proven tactics before we get to our Q&A here. Communicate with family and friends, those in your network. We could expand this to basically say this is networking 101. But just like we're talking about not keeping your head down at your current job, it's not that, this is the time to be reaching out to people. Let people know of your current circumstances. If you have concerns about your current job or where things are, reaching out and letting people know about circumstances and where you might be headed next or what you might be looking for. Let other people be your eyes and ears for you. And by the way, of course, you can do the same thing potentially for them. LinkedIn is your friend for this. So make sure that you are not just sort of, again, keeping your head down on this. Use your friends, your family, your connections, your former colleagues, your current colleagues, whatever it might be. And finally, once again, getting back to that context of sort of being a human, be good to yourself. I mean, it's a tough time right now, and we're in, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Give yourself a break, give yourself breaks, and celebrate wins. If you do something at your current role that, now you can add a fresh bullet to your resume that you kind of always really wanted to have on there. Or if you get some new credential through an online training program or something like that, and now you can add that to your resume, or now that qualifies you for a certain kind of job. Celebrate that. Take time and say, hey, you know what? I did that. That's a big deal. And that's going to help me get to where I want to go in my career. So 9 other proven tactics. Again, some of these might seem like little things, but I can tell you that there are big things. And in a competitive hiring process, they could be really important. This has been a pretty quick presentation. We've hit a lot of high notes about certain aspects of a job search and how to maximize your chances. We've barely scratched the surface. There's a lot of other things that go into career management, many of them listed here. And so just understand that while the things we've listed here are important, by no means are they the only thing. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. Thank you for the time. I hope I've been able to give you some practical advice and things that you can immediately use to help you better manage your careers. And so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Helen, and we'll see what we got going in the Q&A. Helen?
Yeah, Kevin, if you click on Q&A and publish, you'll see all the questions that are written out there. I'll read them out loud to you, and if you could just answer them back for us, that would be great. But thank you so much for presenting on this. This is a lot of great information, especially during this time when no one's really sure what to do when it comes to career management. So this has been really helpful. But yeah, we got plenty of questions. We're going to try to zoom through them as fast as we can. So the first one is from Catherine K. How do you manage your branding online when you're simultaneously applying to 2 different lines of work? For example, you don't want to totally give up on your dream career, but you realize that it's nearly impossible to get hired during this current situation.
Yeah, that's really tough because, one of the things, I love that question. It's hard. It's hard to do that because we can customize resumes, all day long for specific kinds of jobs. And by the way, you should always be customizing your resume for every position that you apply for. But when it comes to online branding, you only have one LinkedIn profile. You're not going to have 2 different LinkedIn profiles, and one is going to be for my finance roles, and one's going to be for my marketing roles. It just doesn't work that way. I think that when it comes to your online branding, there is a way to sort of do everything there is sort of communicate sort of your openness to other different kinds of roles. It's a really tricky thing. I think that the best thing that I would suggest on that is that if you're trying to pivot to something new, to sort of brand yourself around, I would recommend branding yourself around the new thing that you're going for, and kind of more emphasize that on things like LinkedIn and your other online branding, because your other experience in whatever you've been doing will kind of in some ways speak for itself. And where you need the increased emphasis is sort of on where you're going right now. But yes, just because we only have one online presence, it can be really tough. The bottom line is anyone who's looking to change jobs or change careers or is considering 2 different options, at the end of the day, the question is can you get the job done effectively, and do you have the kind of personality and interpersonal skills that are going to fit in with our organization? The other thing that can work wonders for you around that, by the way, is your networking. For people who are looking to change jobs or especially change careers, your networking. What that one thing that your networking does is it enables someone within an organization or within a certain field to help you tell your story to prospective hiring managers and recruiters and to prospective companies. And so that, on top of what I just mentioned, emphasizing your networking and let other people sort of be your voice and explain your value proposition and how you're able to pivot successfully into something new, is going to be really important.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next one's from Pablo Garcia. So what are your thoughts on going to grad school given the time and money investment it represents in the short term as the economic prospects are unclear? Would it be worth it as an attempt to maximize earning potentials, or would it be better to remain in the job market during that time if fortunate enough to have a steady job?
That's a phenomenal question. I love that question. Thank you for asking it. So the question of whether or not to attend graduate school or pursue graduate school is highly, highly subjective. I can't sit here and say that, yes, you should go to grad school or everyone. I would never say that. Grad school is not for everyone. For people who are in certain industries or certain functions or at certain stages of their careers, it can be an important part of one's career development. But it is definitely not for everyone. It's sometimes people are surprised to hear me say that since I do grad school admissions coaching, but heck, an undergraduate degree isn't for everyone. Same thing as that graduate school isn't for everyone. The question is a really good one, but
I think Kevin's coming back on right now. But yeah, I guess during this time, I do want to make an announcement. I put it in the sticky note in the chat tab, but the slide deck to this presentation, and I know Kevin announced it too, will be available. I'll just send you the instructions in the post-webinar email that you'll receive with the recording of this webinar. So I'm going to try my best to get this ready in a couple of hours. So you should be able to receive this in, about, I mean, I can't say 2 p.m. because not everyone's in my central time, but yeah, you'll receive them in a couple of hours for sure. But yeah, we are going to wait for Kevin for a little bit. But thank you for asking all these questions. I'm seeing so many. And I realized since we started the webinar program, since March, since shelter in place took place, we're getting a lot of engagement over our chat tab, and I really appreciate that because I think we all want to connect in some ways, and it's just nice to see everyone just connecting on here. So thank you so much for being so engaging and sharing your thoughts. But yeah, so I'm gonna wait just one more minute. So thank you for your patience. I'm gonna try to contact Kevin and see if he can come back on. Worst case scenario, if we don't get to Q&A before we end in a couple of minutes, I'll try to compile this list of questions and I'll send it over to Kevin and then he can answer it back. And then I'll send these over to you all, to everyone who attended today. So give me 1 or 2 minutes. I'm going to try to contact Kevin right now. Thank you. Yes, we are back on.
Helen, can
All
you hear me?
right. Yes. Can you hear
We
me?
had some technical difficulties there. I hope everyone can hear me.
I think because everyone's now basically on virtual programs, we understand that there will always be technical difficulties. So no worries. But yeah, why don't we now move on to Stephanie's question? Kevin, can you hear me? I think there's some technical difficulties still. All right. Give us 1 second.
Try this. Hello, can people hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us? Or I guess me.
Hey, there we go. Hey,
Perfect.
goodness gracious. You
Sweet.
can hear me, Helen.
Thank Yes, can you
Oh
hear
my
me?
goodness.
Awesome.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened.
It
Yeah,
happened.
yeah, I
It
can.
happened.
I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. I just all of a sudden everything went totally quiet. Sorry about that, but I'd be happy to jump back in on Q&A if we have a little time.
Yeah, we do have a little time. Thank you everyone so much for your patience. But it is the end of the hour, so I want to be
Mhm.
mindful of your time. So if you need to leave, feel free to leave. But Kevin and I are going to stay on for a couple more minutes to answer some more questions. But Kevin, before we let people go, or those of us who need to go, do you have any last minute comment or advice that you would like to share with us?
Sure. I think that again, I would. It's a tough time for a lot of people right now, and I understand that it's easy to sort of lose some of the big picture perspective. I think it happens to the best of us, but I would just again encourage people to keep in mind that there are always things that you can be doing to help manage your career, even if it's not specifically applying for a bunch of jobs right now necessarily. There are always things that you can be doing, and I hope this webinar gave you some helpful advice toward doing that. If you do have any other questions, if we didn't get to, unfortunately, because of our technical difficulties or whatever, if you do have any other questions, please feel free to contact me directly. I'd be happy to do that. I do a free 30-minute phone call for anyone who's interested in my coaching. So you're welcome to contact me for that as well. My contact information is on the screen right there. And thank you again, Helen, to Northwestern for hosting me here today.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you everyone who attended. But we're going to now move on to a couple more questions. Um, but yeah, let's move on to Stephanie's question. Is now the time to consider a change in career path if you're still fortunate enough to be working? I know people who are considering a change in their career path, but are concerned about the risk associated with something entirely new and unknown. Do you have any advice for these professionals?
It is a very tough time to be thinking about a new career path right now. I think that I would want you to keep in mind, I've specifically heard from two people this week talking about the fact that they had started a new job within the past few months. And when it came time for the organization to make cuts, they had a policy of basically last in, first out when it comes to that. And so, we can never know kind of how that might go. And, it could depend on the overall stability of the industry and where you might be going. So I think there is some specifics here that you might want to keep in mind. I can tell you that right now is a really tough time. You talk about a career change. We could be talking about a just a new job within your current functional role or within your current industry, or we could be talking about a pivot to something totally different. The former is possible, definitely possible right now. The latter is possible too, but it's going to be that much more challenging because again, there are just, I mean, it's working both ways against job seekers right now because the number of available jobs is going down and the number of job seekers is going up. So neither of those things is helping potential job seekers right now. Does that mean it's impossible? Absolutely not. It just means it's going to be that much more challenging. And so to answer the question, I think it would partially depend on kind of what kind of career change we're talking about making and whether it's a modest pivot in the road or a total 90-degree sort of thing right now. But the bottom line is that if someone is really interested and is ready for it, hey, get out there and go out and get it. And if you can, I mean, I know people who are doing it right now. Again, it's not impossible. It's just going to take more time and effort than it usually does, and it usually takes quite a bit.
Awesome. Thank you. And the next one is Jane's question. What is the most sensitive way to network given the mass instability?
The most sensitive? Oh, I mean, well, so normally when it comes to networking, I mean, your A1 resource for that these days is going to be LinkedIn. And only more so now that, people are, sheltering in place and staying home, working remotely and that kind of thing. It's important to understand that people are going through tough times right now. But people are out there and they are willing to help. And if you look at job boards, there are still jobs available out there. But I think that the point is well made, perhaps that, going about it in a delicate way is, I think, really important. And I think one of the first things to do, whether you're reaching out to someone who's already in your network or someone who is prospectively potentially in your network, is just to have that sensitivity to the fact that a lot of things are going on right now. Opening the note with something like, I hope all is well with you and your family. I hope you're all staying safe these days. Just sort of an acknowledgement that, we're living in unusual times right now, and there are a lot of things on people's mind. That being said, with most organizations, the work continues, the beat goes on, and people understand that there's a lot of opportunity right now to reach out to new people. You can do it from home. Thank you to LinkedIn. And people understand that as well. So I think the point is perhaps well made, in that an additional sort of spoonful of humanity when you do reach out to people could go a long way. And but also understand that it's not as though this has completely shut down right now. In fact, it's the total opposite.
Awesome. Thank you. Next one is from
What else?
Chuck. How do you find the hidden jobs that are not advertised if you're not great at networking? Parentheses, introvert ask.
Well, networking for introverts is something I address quite a bit because that is something that can often be challenging for people of that personality preference. I get it. Believe me, I get it. So, so the good news about networking is that it's not. Some people, when they hear, I get that most people don't enjoy networking. They have a lot of aversion to it, and it's not something that they relish doing. Totally get that, especially if someone has a preference toward introversion, because a lot of times when people picture networking, they picture like, okay, it's a big networking event and I'm going to have to walk into like this big room or happy hour or a hotel ballroom, and I have to work the room. And, I'm supposed to, by the time I get out of there, I'm supposed to have everyone's business card or something like that. I guess networking could be like that, but the good news is it doesn't have to be like that. And for people with a preference toward introversion, it definitely doesn't have to be like that. LinkedIn is your friend when it comes to that. And I would want to speak with Chuck specifically about tactics that you could do on LinkedIn, because the nice thing about LinkedIn is that, again, you can contact people from all different areas or all different walks of life. One of the things about networking that we all have to get comfortable with is this notion of sort of putting yourself out there, and a recognition that you bring value to the table too, and you bring things and information and insight that they can benefit from too. So it's a two-way street. And when it comes to networking, whether it's on LinkedIn or at an event or a random opportunity that you meet someone in the line at the coffee shop, there are people who, if you will, who get networking and embrace it and use it for what they can use it for, and there are people who don't. And so, reaching out to someone on LinkedIn for networking purposes is, in my opinion, a really good use of your time. The worst thing that can happen is that you never hear back from the person. Or they politely decline. Usually you just won't hear back from the person. Well, guess what? If you don't hear back from the person, then you're exactly right where you are right now, right? So go ahead and, it's putting yourself out there. I think that, sort of demonstrating some understanding of either who they are or who they work for or their functional area. Just sending someone a LinkedIn request with no explanation or no greater detail about, why you're reaching out or something like that is a mistake. You always, when you go to reach out to someone, especially if someone isn't introducing you, you always want to have some context for why you're reaching out to them. And if you do your research on them, do your research on their organization, and kind of bring that to the table. The biggest, thing just to remember is that networking is a two-way street, and you just have to be willing to sort of put yourself out there. For someone with a preference for introversion, the good news is you can do that from the comfort of your own home. So I'd be happy to talk to you more about that, Chuck. I love your question. Thank you for asking that.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And as a fellow introvert, that's a great question to ask also. We'll go over two more questions.
Oh, it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, look at. There are books on it. This is, self-promotion for introverts. Introverts for the job. So, literally, books have been written on that very subject. So, just because we have a preference for introversion doesn't excuse us from networking.
Absolutely.
It can be done.
All right, we're gonna go over two more questions for today. So the next one is from Megan. LinkedIn seems like a last-ditch posting for employers. I've seen jobs repeatedly posted as new when I applied for that months before. It seems that the way to win is to apply before jobs are posted to the public platforms.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get ahead and win that small chance of an interview when you don't have connections at the company?
Well, so the public, I'm not sure what, so So let me kind of talk big picture, because there's a couple things I'm not totally clear about on that, but I appreciate the question immensely. Yeah. So when it comes to public job boards, whether it's LinkedIn or Indeed or Career Builder or any of the other ones, understand that sometimes recruiters, when they place those postings, there's a process behind it one way or another, and sometimes they have there's automatic settings and all kinds of things that they can do, and so sometimes those postings are going to be there and then they're taken down and they're reposted so that they gain more visibility. Other times that happens because their first batch of people who applied, frankly, didn't have the background and skills that they need, or they decided to retool the job posted. There's a lot of different reasons why they could do that. My suggestion for anyone who's thinking about changing jobs and applying, looking at these online job boards like LinkedIn, definitely part of your strategy, but much more big picture. I would definitely encourage you, as part of your strategy, to have target organizations identified where you want to work. And this is a whole area of my coaching that I work with people all the time. And that is that identify 20 to 25 different organizations where, if a certain job came open there, you'd want to be first in line, because boy, that company really resonates with you personally. You believe in their value, their mission, their products, their services, what they do, all these different things, and have those things identified as your first step. And that involves a lot of research and a lot of discussions and that sort of thing. Once you identify your target organizations, then the next step in your strategy is to, guess what, work your way toward building a network within the organization. Could be one person, could be more than one person. And by the way, it doesn't have to be someone specifically within that exact area that you're targeting. If you have a huge multinational corporation, you could be targeting a job with a certain company that's in, you live in Miami, but your best contact within that organization, lives in Chicago. It could totally happen that way. Don't think that you have to have someone in that department or even in that geographic location. You use LinkedIn to your advantage to build a relationship with people in the organization. So you have your target organizations, you use LinkedIn to build your network within that organization. And then when the time comes, when that job comes open, then you apply for that. And hopefully the strength of your organization, of your network rather, is such that you can reach out to that person and they're willing to not only raise your visibility as an applicant, but then also they're comfortable with you putting their name on the application as referring you to the job. That is, without question, the best way to gain visibility within an organization, and to make sure that your applications are being noticed, to have someone within the organization. And by the way, an earlier question too mentioned this whole thing about the hidden job market. The hidden job market is, the way you get, the way you develop an awareness of what that is, and the way that jobs are created for specific individuals. I keep saying it, it's networking. It's people knowing who you are, what talents you have, what background you have. And then all of a sudden, when people are aware of that within an organization and they have a certain need, suddenly they know that you're out there, and hey, this person or that person would be a great fit and they could really help us do this. And all of a sudden you have a situation where a job is actually created for you. That's what we talk about with the hidden job market. There are job experts out there who say that roughly 80 to 90% of jobs that are available in the market are not advertised in any specific place. That is that they're part of the hidden job market. And the only way that you're going to get out there and discover what those are is to actually start having conversations, start talking to people, start exchanging messages, however you prefer to do it, with people within those organizations. That's the only way that I'm aware of finding the hidden job market. You got to get out there and look. That's the very nature of it. It doesn't. So anyway, the strategy is to identify those target organizations, create a network within those. And again, LinkedIn is your friend. And this is something I coach people around all the time. And then when the jobs come open, then you are, people there. And it's, I know that for some people, especially, some people may not have the luxury to sort of do that longer strategy. And I know it takes more time. I know it takes more effort, but I can tell you, having been doing career coaching for more than 10 years, that is the kind of strategy that most often leads to career fulfillment and people being satisfied in their jobs, when they actually take the time to actually execute on a process for their entire job search, not just sending out applications and, seeing what they get. So great question. I love that question. I wish we had time for more of these, huh?
I know. Great answer.
Guess, huh?
So this is our last question for today.
We have
one more, because a lot of people ask the same question over and over. So this is from Diane, but other people have also asked this. Mm-hmm. Any advice for older career changers closing in on 50? And I saw someone's question that said over 60 also. So any advice for those people with the new advanced degree?
Oh, with the new advanced degree. I think that that's the kind of thing where, I mean, when you have a new credential, whether it's again, a certification, a degree, something, new to offer, that is a great moment to be thinking about a change in your career, doing something different, a promotion, asking for whatever it might be. Although now is not a good time to be asking for promotions for most organizations. But it's a great moment to you're signaling to the market that you have some new skill, you have some new ability, and that you're ready for something different. No matter if someone is 25 years old or 65 years old, the question that for people who are 65 or 60 or whatever it is, you've probably been exposed many times to the hiring process. You've hired people yourself, you've been in on interviews, whatever it may be. I think that the thing to think about there is what that evaluation process is like. And at the end of the day, they're basically companies are going to more or less evaluate, really, it's two things when it comes to a potential applicant here. One is, can they get the job done? Do they have the skills, the ability, the knowledge, the background, whatever it takes to get this job done? Do they have the ability to get the job done? And number two is do they have the interpersonal skills or the personality, or the disposition that they are going to be a good fit culturally for our organization? I mean, that sometimes is more important than the skills. And so this is the same kind of thing that I coach people around, for example, who have left the workforce for a certain amount of time and are coming back into the workforce. So for example, someone who has been taking care of a sick parent or something like this, or some people who take maternity or paternity leave, and they've been out of the workforce for a year or two, or they've been, for even longer. The question that the employer is going to need to know, again, no matter what the circumstance, any of those demographic things is in play, is does this person have the skills needed? And so to the extent that you can demonstrate that you're plugged into an organization, that you're plugged into the industry, that you speak the language, and that you have the skills, whether that's technical skills, interpersonal skills, you're aware of what's going on in the industry, whatever that is, that you are basically able to be plugged into an organization and you know exactly what's going on. And sometimes too, it can be a situation where when you can have those personal conversations with hiring managers, again, as part of your networking or as part of an interview. Sometimes people are hiring certain roles where they need someone for certain positions, and it might be they're anticipating it being kind of a 3-year thing, a 2-year thing, a 5-year thing. It's not necessarily going to be something that's more permanent. And sometimes, saying, like, look, this is something. This is where I can add value. This is what I want to do. I see this as, something that I can help your organization with. And by the way, I bring all these other skills to the organization, and I want to bring those to your company, to your organization, and help you as much as I possibly can. Be willing to help out in other areas too. But the bottom line is that it's up to you, the job seeker, to demonstrate that you have the skills and ability to get that job done effectively, no matter what your background is, no matter how long it's been since you've worked, no matter what your degree is, no matter where you're from. That's your number one goal. I mean, at the end, as job seekers, we are marketing ourselves. We're selling ourselves. It's one of those settings. I get this a lot of time in my coaching when the interview setting. People talk, they don't like talking about themselves. They don't like promoting themselves. They don't like touting their own accomplishments. And I get that, totally get that. But in the job search setting, this is one of those times where you have to basically tell them what you bring to the table. You will have to get comfortable with doing that, because if you don't, who else will in the interview setting? And guess what? What if your competition does? Love that question.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I know that
sure we don't have time for more.
I know. I mean, I guess a follow-up question on that is, what if, let's say, what are your thoughts on those who are closing in on 50 and 60s, in their 50s and 60s, and they have longer standing credentials? I think we had somebody ask about that. Or let me see. Yeah, just any particular suggestions for someone who's over 60 right now who, yeah. And someone asked, do late career changers, 50 plus years, really stand a chance?
They definitely do. I mean, it's I mean, they definitely stand a chance. And no matter, again, if you're 30, 40, 50, 60, wherever you are in your career, the challenge is everyone has certain challenges when it comes to the job search, no matter where they are, for whatever reason. And something to keep in mind too is that as we elevate ourselves, as we go along in a career, if by chance one of our career path is that we're getting into roles of more and more responsibility, it's often going to be the case where there are fewer and fewer jobs available as you move up, if you will, in an organization. And an organization will usually have a lot more entry level roles than they will, executive vice president roles. That's just the nature of the beast. And so one of the things that I would definitely recommend for people who are thinking about a career change or thinking about, career 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0, whatever it might be, is understand that just because your most recent role within an organization was you were a manager or a director or a VP or whatever it was, when you make that sort of switch, understand that you very likely would have to make sort of a lateral move, and more likely than that, you'd go down a few rungs, if you will, in the organization. And then if it were your desire and if it was a fit, maybe then your trajectory would be pretty good and you could move on in the organization and you could elevate if you wanted to. It's been my experience that a lot of people who are kind of in the sort of on their judgment, they're kind of at the tail end of their careers. They're not necessarily looking for those positions of more formal responsibility. Some people are, but some are not. And they really want to get involved in an organization where they're doing their job, but they also have a really direct impact on the people in the organization too. At the end of the day, any job seeker, their role again is to make sure that they're clearly communicating what their potential value is to the organization, whatever they bring to the table. And they need to make sure that they are current with whatever skills, whatever the requirements are, whatever things that organization needs. They need to make sure that they are current on those things right now. And you can do that yourself. You can do it through an interview. I keep coming back to networking. I hate to sort of, beat that drum all over again, but really that is so important to any job seeker. It's just absolutely vital, especially in this kind of a time, because again, you can tell your story all day long, but if you have someone within the organization as part of your network who is also building up your case, for why you would be a good fit with the organization, it makes your candidacy all that much more stronger.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So that's all the time we have for today. Kevin, why don't we talk offline and see if we can answer some of these questions via email, and then we can send it back to our attendees.
Sure.
So hopefully that's helpful for you all. But thank you everyone for your patience. Y'all are rock stars. Thank you, Kevin, for presenting on this important and timely topic.
Thank you.
But yeah, recording of this will be sent to your inbox. We will try to get to the question Q&A, unanswered Q&A in the next couple of days. So give us some time. But thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Kevin, again. And have a great rest of your Thursday. Go Cats!
Thank you all. Bye-bye.